Have you ever imagined facing an impossible choice? To bow down before an idol and live, or to stand firm in your faith and die burned alive? This is not just an old story. It is the account of Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah, three young Hebrew men who faced literal fire and refused to deny their faith. They are best known by the names they received in Babylon: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Today, you will discover how, unwavering faith, these men transformed a fiery furnace into the stage for the greatest miracle recorded in the book of Daniel. You will understand why their spiritual courage still resonates through the centuries, challenging each of us to answer, how far does my faithfulness to God go? And at the end of this video, I'm going to reveal something that many don't realize about this story, a profound truth that will change the way you view the trials in your own life. This is the most exciting biblical story about obedience to God above all else. Get ready, because the fire is about to be lit. Babylon. The name alone evoked fear and fascination in equal measure. It was the heart of an empire that had conquered nations, destroyed temples, and taken entire peoples into captivity. Its walls rose like mountains of human pride. Its hanging gardens defied nature itself. And at the center of it all, a king who considered himself a god among men. It was in this place of absolute power and blatant idolatry that three young Hebrews lived. They did not choose to be there. They were torn from their families, their land, everything they knew. Jerusalem had fallen, the temple destroyed. And now, these young men served in the palace of the same king who had devastated their nation. But something about them was different. While thousands bowed before Babylonian power, while silent multitudes accepted the new reality, these three carried within themselves a flame that no decree could extinguish. They knew who the true God was, and that certainty made them dangerous. Babylon demanded more than labor. It demanded the soul. It demanded worship. And when human power decides that faith is a threat, the stage is set for an inevitable confrontation between the throne of earth and the throne of heaven. The question that echoed silently through those marble corridors was simple but deadly. What happens when your faith becomes a crime, punishable by death? Their true names carried the memory of God. Hananiah, it meant the Lord is gracious. Mishael, it meant who is like God. Azariah, it meant the Lord helps. Each name was a declaration of faith, an identity forged in the knowledge of the God of Israel. But Babylon had other plans. The empire doesn't just conquer territories, it conquers identities. And so they were renamed, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, names linked to the pagan gods of Babylon. A clear attempt to erase who they were and reconstruct them in the image of the empire. Imagine the scene. Intelligent young men, educated at the finest royal academy, trained to serve in the palace. They had learned the language, the culture, the customs. They held positions of influence. They had access to the king. Outwardly, they seemed completely integrated into the Babylonian system. But inside, the flame of faith burned intact. You can change a man's name, but you cannot change the God he serves. They responded when they were called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But when they closed their eyes to pray, they were once again Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, servants of the Most High God. And this duality, living in Babylon without belonging to it, placed them in a unique position. They knew that one day they would have to choose. One day the empire would demand more than their labor. It would demand their souls. And when that day came, the names that had been imposed upon them would mean nothing compared to the covenant they had with the true God. Loyalty to God is non-negotiable. It doesn't adapt, it doesn't bend. And Babylon was about to discover this in the most dramatic way possible. The real question wasn't whether they would remain faithful. The question was, what would be the price of that faithfulness? The sun rose over the plain of Dura when something monumental began to take shape. A statue, not just any statue, a colossal image, clad in gleaming gold, some 27 meters high. It dominated the landscape. It could be seen for miles around, and its purpose was clear: to demand worship. King Nebuchadnezzar had decreed that all the governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, and authorities from all the provinces should assemble for the dedication of the statue. And when the music sounded, when the trumpets, harps, zithers, and the entire royal orchestra began to play, everyone should bow down and worship. There were no exceptions. There were no alternatives. The decree was absolute. Anyone who did not bow down would immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Idolatry had become law, and faith had become a crime. Think about what that meant. It wasn't just a political issue. It was a direct attack on the first commandment: "You shall have no other gods before me." It was a demand to betray everything you believe in, to deny the God who has always been with you, to bow down before a brilliant lie just to save your life. And the crowd would do exactly that. Because most people choose survival over conviction. They choose comfort over courage. You choose to bow down instead of standing tall, but not Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They knew what was at stake. They knew this moment would come. And now, facing the golden statue and the death sentence, they would have to make the most important decision of their lives. When obeying God means disobeying the king, what do you choose? Music filled the air. The sound of trumpets echoed across the plain of Dura like an irresistible command. And then, like synchronized waves, thousands of people prostrated themselves. Governors, princes, officials, all bowed before the golden statue. The ground was covered with faces turned downwards in submission. All of them, except three. In the midst of that prostrate crowd, three silhouettes remained upright, motionless, steady. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They didn't bow down. They didn't pretend. They didn't try to hide it. They simply remained standing while everyone around them surrendered, and the silence was deafening, because in Babylon, disobedience does not go unnoticed. Envious eyes were already watching. Tongues ready to accuse were already moving, and quickly the news reached the king's ears. There are certain Jews who do not respect your decree. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not worship your gods or the golden statue you have set up. The spiritual courage of these men was not impulsive. It was profound, built over years of communion with God, daily choices of faithfulness, an unwavering conviction that there are things worth dying for, and one of them is the truth that only God deserves worship. Before we continue, if this story is touching your heart, leave a like below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more inspiring Bible stories like this one. Now let's see what happens when faith meets the wrath of a king. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just angry, he was furious. His face contorted with rage. How dare three men defy his decree before the entire empire? How dare they stand when everyone else bowed down? The king summoned them, and there, before the most powerful throne in the world, the three young Hebrews were about to give the most powerful testimony of faith ever recorded in the scriptures. What do you say when your life depends on denying God? The king's voice echoed through the throne room, heavy with disbelief and threat. Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not worship my gods or adore the golden statue I have set up? It was a last chance, an opportunity to reconsider, to save their lives. Nebuchadnezzar even offered a second chance. Now, if you are ready to bow down and worship the statue I have made, fine. But if you do not worship, you will be immediately thrown into a blazing furnace. And then came the arrogant question that would seal the king's fate, and what God can deliver them from my hands? Silence, a heavy silence that precedes the words that change everything. And then, with a calmness that comes only from absolute faith, they answered, not with excuses, not with hesitation, but with one of the most powerful declarations in the entire Bible. O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. But even if he does not, "We want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Let these words sink in. But if he doesn't deliver us, they weren't presuming a miracle. They weren't bargaining with God. They weren't testing their faith with demands. They were simply saying, our obedience to God doesn't depend on the outcome. Even if he chooses not to deliver us, we will not bow down. This is the deepest test of faith. It's not serving God because you expect blessings. It's serving God because he is God, because he is worthy, because nothing, not even death, can separate you from the love and faithfulness you owe him. Nebuchadnezzar was furious. The fiery furnace would be heated 7 times hotter than usual. The sentence had been given, and the journey to the fire was about to begin. Would you have the courage to say no when the furnace is right in front of you? The furnace was no metaphor. It was real, brutal, a fiery structure used to melt metals, capable of reaching unimaginable temperatures. And now, by order of the king, it had been heated 7 times more than usual. The heat was so intense it could be felt meters away. The strongest soldiers in the army were summoned to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were tied up in their full clothing, cloaks, tunics, turbans, everything they were wearing. There would be no escape. There would be no last chance to reconsider. And then the march began. Each step brought them closer to the roar of the flames. The heat intensified. The air grew thick, difficult to breathe. The soldiers carrying them trembled, not just from the effort, but from the horror of what they were about to do. The furnace was so hot that when the soldiers approached to throw the 3 young Hebrew men inside, the flames consumed them instantly. The executioners died before even completing the execution. That was the level of intensity. That was the fate awaiting Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And at the moment they were thrown into the fire, everything indicated that the story had ended. That faith, however noble, was no match for the power of the empire. That God, for some reason, had chosen not to intervene. But God never promised to deliver us, do fire. He promised to be with us, no fire. And what was about to happen inside that furnace would forever change how the world viewed the God of Israel. Because sometimes God doesn't take you out of the trial. He goes into it with you. Nebuchadnezzar was watching, satisfied, avenged. Justice, or rather his distorted version of justice, had been served. 3 rebels had been eliminated. The decree had been fulfilled. But then something happened that made the king rise from his throne in alarm. His eyes widened, his face paled. He turned to his advisors and asked, confused, "Weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Yes, O king, there were 3. And then came the statement that defied all human logic. "Look, I see 4 men walking freely in the midst of the fire, and they are not injured. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods." 4. Not 3. 4 men walking freely amidst flames that had killed trained soldiers simply by getting close. And the room had a different appearance. Glorious, supernatural. Many scholars believe it was a theophany, a pre-incarnate manifestation of Christ himself. God did not merely observe from afar. He entered the furnace. He walked with them through the fire. He transformed the place of execution into a place of divine presence. And the flames that were meant to destroy them did not touch a single hair on the heads of the 3 young men. They weren't screaming, they weren't running, they were walking, free, peaceful, in the company of God himself. The fire that should have been their end became the stage for the most extraordinary miracle. The fiery furnace did not consume his faith, it revealed God's faithfulness. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king who had mocked, asking what God can deliver them, was about to receive the most powerful answer he could ever imagine. Fire doesn't decide who you are, it reveals you. Nebuchadnezzar approached the furnace door. The heat was still intense, the flames still roared, but he needed to see with his own eyes, and so he shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here!" And they left, calmly. like someone leaving a walk in the garden. And when the governors, the officials, and all those present gathered around them, the impossible became visible. The fire had not touched their bodies, their hair was not singed, their clothes were not burned, not even the smell of smoke remained on them. Read that again, not even the smell of smoke. The fire consumed the ropes that bound them. They were free, but it touched nothing else. The flames that killed soldiers trained by proximity didn't even manage to leave a trace of ash on the servants of the living God. This was divine deliverance in its purest form. Not a last-minute escape, not a political negotiation, but an undeniable demonstration of God's power over all the forces of nature and all the decrees of men. And the message was clear. God does not abandon those who are faithful to Him. He may not always deliver in the way we expect, but when He acts in a way that leaves no doubt about who He is. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah not only survived, they triumphed. The furnace that was supposed to destroy them became the most powerful testimony of their lives. And now, before the entire empire, the God they served in secret would be publicly exalted. Faithfulness to God is never in vain, even when it goes through fire. The words that came out of Nebuchadnezzar's mouth that day shocked everyone. This was the man who had destroyed Jerusalem, the king who considered himself above all gods, the ruler who had decreed death for anyone who did not worship his statue. And now, there, before the furnace, he made a startling statement. Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. He acknowledged it. He admitted it. The God of Israel was supreme, and then he went further. He issued a new decree declaring that no people, nation, or language could speak against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, for no other God could save in that way. Consider the reversal. The same king who asked, "What God can deliver them?" now declared that no other God had the power that the God of Israel demonstrated. The furnace that was supposed to silence the testimony of the faithful became the megaphone that proclaimed divine sovereignty throughout the empire. Furthermore, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted in the province of Babylon. The faithfulness that nearly cost them their lives resulted in even greater honor, influence, and authority. God not only saved them, He exalted them. The book of Daniel records this moment not only as history, but as a living prophecy, a demonstration that the Most High God rules over the kingdoms of men, and that no human decree can annul His will. When you remain faithful to God, even your enemies are forced to acknowledge His greatness. Nebuchadnezzar is dead. The Babylonian Empire has fallen. But what about the faith of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah? This one keeps burning, because this story isn't just about 3 young men in ancient Babylon. It's about you. It's about all of us who live amidst pressures to deny our faith, to bow down before modern idols, to choose comfort over conviction. The furnace today may not be literal, but the threats are real. It could be pressure at work to compromise your values. It could be the fear of being rejected for standing up for biblical truth. It could be the choice between popularity and faithfulness to God. It could be the temptation to silence your faith to avoid conflict. And it is precisely in these moments that the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego resonates with renewed force, because they teach us that obedience to God above all else is not fanaticism. It is true faith. Spiritual courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, but the presence of conviction. And God doesn't always deliver us, theatrials, but always with yous in trials. Remember the promise I made at the beginning? That profound truth that would change the way you see your own struggles. Here it is. The fire of trial is not meant to destroy you, but only to burn away that which binds you. The ropes were consumed. The men were set free. And when you emerge from the fire, you emerge without even the smell of smoke, transformed, free, and a living witness to the power of God. Hebrews 11:34 says that through faith, some quenched the power of fire. That faith still exists. It still transforms, it still liberates, and it's available to you today. So, what is your furnace? What is that area of your life where God is calling you to remain faithful, even when it seems impossible? Where do you need to choose between bowing down or standing tall? I want to challenge you today. Choose loyalty, not because you are guaranteed a miracle, but because God is worthy of your trust no matter what happens. And when you make that choice, you are not alone. The fourth man in the furnace, Jesus Christ, walks with you. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment saying, "I choose to remain faithful." Share this video with someone who needs spiritual courage today, and subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more inspiring Bible stories that will strengthen your faith. Remember, men who did not deny their faith are not distant heroes. They are real-life examples of what God can do in anyone who chooses to trust Him completely. Faith that withstands the fire is not optional, it's essential, and it's available to you now. May the God of Hananiah, Mishael and Azariah, the God who enters the furnace with His sons, strengthen you for every battle, every trial, every difficult choice. Because this Christian faith in difficult times is not about human strength. It is about the power of the living God working through surrendered hearts. Until the next video, stay strong, stay faithful, and remember, fire does not have the last word, God does.